Tennessee got blown out by Houston 69-50 in the Elite Eight on Sunday. The story was Tennessee only scoring 15 points in the first half, which was an NCAA record low in the Elite Eight for a seed as high as Tennessee's. They shot 1 of 15 from three, missed their first 14 attempts. So I'm going to ask this question very simply, and it's going to be the poll question. Did Tennessee just have a bad shooting night, or did Houston's defense have something to do with it? That's the poll question. I'm setting it up now. Please vote if you can. I'm going to write it out as we, again, because it's just me today, I have to write out the poll question as we do this. So again, the question is this: did Tennessee just have a bad shooting game, or did Houston's defense cause it? And the options will be Vols just shot poorly, Houston's defense caused it. Those are your answers. Go ahead and vote on it now. Today's tough question, again, brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. I'm going to say Tennessee, believe it or not, their bad shooting performance was caused by Houston. Now, let me explain. Tennessee had some great looks in the final 10 minutes of the first half, and they missed them. So I could understand why you would think they just shot poorly. Here's what's missed about that, though. The first 10 minutes of the game, really the first 9, when Tennessee only scored 2 points in the first 5 and then another 2 in the next 4. Houston's defense suffocated Tennessee and took them out of their rhythm. Here's how Tennessee likes to play offense. Okay, they don't really do the dribble drive, but they do like to get into the paint and then dish, or they like to come off screens. Chaz Lanier likes to either come off screens and have space, or Zakai Ziegler likes to drive, and then they kick it out to Chaz Lanier, or even Igor Milicic, Jordan Gainey, whoever it may be. And sometimes the ball comes back out to Zakai Ziegler, and he'll have space for a 3-2. Houston was doing 2 things very successfully yesterday, and this has to do with Kelvin Sampson's kind of 3-2 matchup zone that he runs a lot. They had the size, even with foul trouble, which we'll get into, to crowd the paint. So Tennessee couldn't drive and kick. They couldn't drive and kick at all. On top of that, on the perimeter, they were coming around all the ball screens. And this was very evident in the first 9 minutes of the half. Tennessee had trouble adjusting. And because they had trouble adjusting to that, for the first 9 minutes, I think that was Houston's defense that held them to 4 points. Now, the second 10 minutes come, and Tennessee's just shooting poorly from 3, even though they're adjusting and they're starting to get good looks. Here's the issue. By that point, they're already down 15-4, 19-6. Houston's running away with it. Once the other team starts running away with it, it's in your head, and you start to struggle shooting the ball even more, and things spiral. And that's exactly what happened to Tennessee in this game on Sunday. I think Houston's defense, the first 9 minutes, put them up comfortably. By the time Tennessee was able to adjust, they were already spiraling and worried about how the game was getting out of hand. That made it only worse to allow Houston to build a 21-point lead at one point in the first half and to go into halftime up 34-15. And Tennessee was just never able to recover. So while I understand the thought that Tennessee shot poorly, and they did, I think they finished the game. You guys can correct me on this, but was it 5 of 29? I think they were 5 of 29 from 3. Even as they adjusted in the second half, they went 4 of 14 at the second half, so they weren't great. I think you have to give credit to Houston's defense. There's a few things that, given the way Tennessee's constructed, they just weren't able to handle with Houston. Part of this is their injuries. Okay, if JP Estrella is fully healthy, if Cameron Carr is still on the team, we might be talking about a different type of game, because if JP Estrella is healthy, they can throw him out there and play a little bit bigger and dump it down low to Estrella, and then Estrella can kick it out. They didn't really have a true offensive big they could dump it down low to throughout the year, and that proved costly in this game, okay? Because then that would have forced Houston to collapse and had given them more options. But because of the way things went down, I think Houston's defense actually caused a lot of what happened yesterday. And you have to give Kelvin Sampson and Houston credit. Look, Kelvin Sampson, this is his second Final Four in 5 years, his third Final Four in his career. He has been a very, very successful head coach at Oklahoma, Indiana. I know he had the issue at Indiana that got him fired, and then he comes right back to Houston and builds a program there. This dude knows ball. Okay, Kelvin Sampson's a heck of a coach. He and Rick Barnes have a great connection, and I think you have to give more credit to Houston. Everybody can look at what they didn't do and what their team didn't do. Houston had a ton to do with what Tennessee didn't do. And so I think with that in mind, I think that Tennessee particularly in a game where the refs let him play, and I'm not knocking that. I think you want the refs to let him play in the NCAA tournament. Had trouble getting its offense free-flowing the way they needed it to. The lack of offensive presence in the post proved very costly. They couldn't get the spacing they needed for Chaz Lanier to go off the way he likes to go off in space, and Igor Milicic couldn't be a threat driving to the basket. Would have been a big help if he could, honestly. One of the bigger knocks on this game is that Igor Milicic didn't do what he should have done, which is as a stretch four, you want him to shoot well from three, but he also is supposed to be good at driving to the basket. If you let him drive to the basket from the top, he should have the size to be able to make an impact, particularly if Houston's not going to collapse and stay around the perimeter, which happened a lot. So I think that, honestly, Tennessee just, yes, they shot poorly, but I think they shot poorly because Houston took them out of their rhythm in the first half. I'm going to get your guys' thoughts in 1 second. But first, the show is brought to you by Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones.
All right, welcome back. Going to the poll question, did Tennessee just have a bad shooting game, or did Houston's defense cause it? 67% say Vols just shot poorly. 33% say Houston's defense caused it. I'm going with the 33%. It's now 68 to 32, 28 if you guys have voted. Look, I get your issues with how Tennessee shot, but I think there's just a lot of things that went into play on that. To go to the message board for a few things that people are saying. Timothy McGee goes, negative Caleb. We just got beat. The ball wasn't falling. Yes, the ball wasn't falling, Timothy, but I guess my point is sometimes people say, oh, you just shot poorly or you just shot well. And we ignore, like, sometimes the other team has something to do with that. I mean, that happens a lot. I think one of the reasons Kentucky shot poorly the other night was Tennessee had something to do with it. So I think that we can't sit there and say that this was just, oh, it just happened to go out that way. You have to give Houston credit with this. So I think that I think this is I think it's just the way Houston ended up playing. Orange Blood says since conference play began this season, the Vols couldn't win more than 4 consecutive games, regardless of who they played. This was bound to happen. Still outperformed expectations in the tournament. I never thought about that, but you're right. I don't think they have won 4 straight. But the SEC was such a brutal league. General Ursa says Houston took the lanes in the paint away from ZZ, which is the thriving force behind the offense. Houston was faster, more physical, and flat out just wanted it more. I'm not going to say if they wanted it more or not, but I will say you are right, General Ursa. Zakai was taken completely out of his comfort zone with the way Houston took away the lanes in the paint. And Tennessee had no bigs to help. They couldn't come around the screens on the perimeter. So there was really just, it felt like there was nowhere for them to go before they finally adjusted. And Unsung says, can't fault Barnes for yesterday. Those guys were as cold as the Arctic Circle from the field. You're right. Look, I'm going to give Rick Barnes credit. He did adjust. Again, guys, 9 minutes into the game, he did find ways to allow more spacing, and Tennessee was missing at that point. The problem was they were so far behind. I think it got into their heads and they panicked a little bit. So that's just how it goes. David Speaks says it's going to be a transfer portal all season for sure. Like 90% of the production will be gone. David, you're right, but Barnes has proven he can handle that. David Speaks says they were definitely ice cold. On Sunday says they were missing wide open shots. Ben says the Vols got open looks. They didn't hit them. Yes, no, I agree, guys. They were missing open looks. I think we're missing, no pun intended, how they got the open looks, though. The first 9 minutes, they did not get open looks. They got no good looks from three. They rushed their threes a lot of times. They started to get the open looks in the second 10 minutes of the first half. By that point, Houston was in such control, I think it was in Tennessee's head. Now, you can knock them. They should have been a lot more composed once they did get the good looks, and they weren't. But the reason they weren't composed was because in the first 10 minutes, Houston took away their offense and forced them to adjust. And by the time they adjusted, Houston had a 15-4 lead. Bender of String says, I feel like it always comes down to Barnes' of talent level and roster construction. It's borderline and mathematically stupid to get this close this many times and I guess not get to the Final Four even once. Well, Bender of Strings, you're forgetting that before the last 3 years, Barnes had missed before 2019, Bart's had about a 10-year period where he missed the Sweet 16. So there were some issues like that. Ronnie Owensby says Tennessee was missing shots like the 2K sliders were turned all the way down. LOL. Funny enough, Bender Shing says not get to the Final Four. Yeah, I get what you mean, Bender Shings, but I think that there was just some bad breaks this year. So there were a lot of things going on. We got a lot to discuss with this. I think Houston did have a good defensive game plan for Tennessee. And I think when you take that into account, once Tennessee got their offensive flow and ball movement adjusted well, they just couldn't hit anything. And I think Houston was in their head because they had control. Derek jumps in and says, we were in their face. They shot good. We didn't. This is a typical Barnes team behavior. First half killed us. First shot was an air ball. Yes, Derek, I understand. But again, the first shot in the first 9 minutes was Houston's defense. I think we have to be fair on this. So there's just a lot to break down. Unsung says Houston scouted really well. I agree with all of you guys on that. So look, lots to discuss here. I think we have to bring up the point, though, that Houston, we have to give them credit for the way they played. We have to give them credit for the way the defense adjusted and handled things. And I think it took away some of the things Tennessee liked to do. And one element of Tennessee's basketball game was taken away because of foul trouble.